Applying for Social Security disability benefits? Well, it can feel a lot like staring up at a sheer cliff face. You know, it's daunting, overwhelming, and let's be honest, kind of scary with all the paperwork and official language. But what if you had a clear step-by-step roadmap, almost like a guide to scaling that cliff for one of the most critical personal journeys you might face?
That's exactly what this deep dive is designed to be for you, a crucial shortcut. Did you know that roughly 65% of initial SSD applications are denied?
Wow, 65%, that's high.
It really is. And often it's not because the claim isn't valid, but due to procedural errors or maybe just incomplete documentation. So today we're equipping you with a structured approach to significantly improve your odds of success, hopefully transforming that daunting climb into a series of manageable steps.
Okay, so our mission is simple. To really unpack these 7 essential steps to successfully navigate the initial SSD application process. We want to ensure you're not just informed, but genuinely, strategically prepared. We'll cover everything from figuring out if you're even eligible all the way to understanding appeals, making this complex process feel both understandable and actionable. Now, before we dig into those steps, let's just quickly set the stage. What exactly are Social Security disability benefits and who are they designed to help?
Right. So the Social Security Administration, or SSA, has 2 main programs that often get confused. First, there's Social Security Disability Insurance, usually called SSDI. Think of this as an insurance policy you've paid into through your work taxes. It's for people who have a qualifying work history.
Okay, the insurance model. Got it.
Then you have Supplemental Security Income, or SSI. This one's different. It's a needs-based program. It helps individuals with limited income and resources, regardless of their work history. It's more about providing a safety net.
Needs-based versus work history-based.
Okay, exactly. But the core idea behind both is that your condition must prevent you from performing what they call substantial gainful activity, SGA, for at least 12 months, or be expected to result in death.
Substantial gainful activity. What does that mean in plain English?
Basically, it means your disability has to be severe enough that you can't work your previous job, and you can't really adjust to other types of work either based on your age, education, and skills. The SSA actually follows a pretty rigorous 5-step evaluation process to determine this eligibility. They look at everything from your current work activity, if any, to the medical severity of your condition. And critically, what you can still do despite your limitations. It's a really comprehensive review.
So it sounds like the takeaway here isn't just about having a condition, but really how well you can demonstrate its impact on your daily life and ability to work right from the very beginning.
Precisely. The documentation has to show that impact clearly.
All right, with that foundation laid, what's the very first step you need to take? How do you even begin to figure out if you're eligible for either SSDI or SSI?
Okay, for SSDI, it really starts with checking your work credit system. Generally, you need to have earned 40 credits total.
40?
Yeah, and crucially, at least 20 of those have to be in the 10 years right before your disability began. Now, if you're younger, you might qualify with fewer credits, so don't let that initial 40 number scare you off if you're, say, in your 20s or 30s.
Okay, so how do you check that?
You'll want to gather your work history documents, things like W-2s and tax returns, and then you can use the SSA's online tools. They have a calculator. Or you can just contact their office directly to figure out your credits. It's a surprisingly straightforward calculation once you have the info.
Good to know. And what are the medical side of eligibility?
Right, the medical side. Your condition needs to either meet the specific detailed criteria outlined in the SSA's listing of impairments. You can think of it as a highly specific medical encyclopedia of qualifying conditions. Or, if it's not listed exactly, it has to be shown to be equivalent in severity to one of those listed conditions. The SSA also considers something called your residual functional capacity, or RFC.
RFC, what's that?
It describes what you can still do despite your limitations. How long can you sit, stand, walk, lift, concentrate? It's a crucial piece, as it helps them assess your remaining ability to perform work-related activities.
Got it. So understanding that eligibility piece up front, both work credits and the medical standard, it sounds like it prevents a lot of wasted time and effort.
Absolutely. It's like having a crucial GPS at the start of a long road trip. It keeps you from driving hundreds of miles in the wrong direction, right? Knowing which specific path, SSDI or SSI, or maybe both, you actually qualify for saves immense time and emotional energy down the line.
That makes perfect sense. Now, once you're pretty sure you're on the right path, the sources describe documentation as the backbone of your application. What exactly does that mean? What do you need to gather, and why is it so incredibly vital?
Oh, it's vital because the SSA needs comprehensive medical evidence to support your claim. They can't just take your word for it, unfortunately. This includes everything. Your treatment records, diagnostic test results, think X-rays, MRIs, blood tests, detailed physician statements, notes from your doctor visits, and a complete list of your medications.
Everything.
Pretty much. And it's really important to collect records from all your treating physicians, specialists, hospitals, and even mental health providers, if that's relevant. And these records should span the entire period of your disability, or at least go back far enough to clearly show its progression and current status. It's not just about a single diagnosis, it's about the chronic nature and the ongoing impact.
Okay, medical records are key. What else?
Beyond medical records, you'll also need personal documents like birth certificates, marriage certificates if applicable, military records if you served, and sometimes financial documents, especially for SSI. They help complete your overall profile for the SSA.
That sounds like a significant undertaking, gathering all that.
Yeah.
My practical advice here, just from seeing how this plays out, is to start gathering these documents early. Seriously, getting records from different providers can take weeks, sometimes months. Don't wait until you're ready to file, and definitely create some kind of comprehensive file system, physical folders, digital files, whatever works for you to keep everything meticulously organized. You'll thank yourself later. It makes the entire process so much smoother and way more efficient.
That's excellent advice. Organization is half the battle.
Okay, so you've done the deep dive into your own records, you've got your file system going. Now it's time to actually fill out these SSA forms. What are the common pitfalls people stumble into when actually tackling the application itself, and how can you avoid them?
Right, the forms. The primary application form is where most of the detail goes, and accuracy is absolutely paramount. You need to provide thorough, honest, and accurate responses that clearly explain how your disability affects your daily life.
Not just that you have it, but how it affects you.
Exactly. How does it limit you day to day? The SSA is looking for a consistent narrative between what you say and what your medical records show. For your work history, for example, don't just list job titles. Provide detailed job descriptions, including the physical demands and skill requirements. Think about specific things. How much lifting was involved? How long did you stand or sit? What about concentration needed or dealing with people?
The nitty-gritty details.
Yes. And for the medical portion, list all your healthcare providers, medications, and treatment dates with complete contact information. Don't leave anyone out. And this is crucial. Your symptoms must be described in detail, their frequency, severity, and impact. Use concrete examples of how your symptoms affect you.
Yeah.
Like instead of saying, my back hurts, say something like, I experience sharp lower back pain after standing for 10 minutes, requiring me to sit down. Or, I have difficulty concentrating on tasks for more than 15 minutes due to fatigue. Concrete examples paint a much clearer picture for the reviewer.
That distinction between general statements and concrete examples feels really key. It sounds like inconsistent information across forms and your medical records, or just inadequate medical documentation overall, are very frequent errors that can really derail an application. Is that fair?
Absolutely. It's often not that the person isn't disabled by the SSA's definition, but that the application doesn't prove it to their standards. Even minor discrepancies or omissions can create doubt, leading to significant delays or even denials. That's why that consistent narrative, backed by thorough detail and solid medical evidence, is just so critical.
Okay, so you've navigated the documentation, filled out the forms with painstaking detail, you've done all this hard work of preparing everything. Now, how do you actually get this application into the right hands? What are the options for submission?
Good question. There are 3 main ways to submit your application. First, and often the most convenient these days, is online through the SSA website, ssa.gov.
Online, pros and cons.
Well, the pros are you get immediate confirmation of receipt, you can save your progress and complete it over multiple sessions, which is helpful since it's long, and it often speeds up the initial processing slightly.
Makes sense.
Alternatively, you can complete the application by phone. You call the SSA, and an employee will fill out the application with you over the phone. This is a great option for individuals with limited computer access, or maybe those who just prefer verbal communication.
Okay.
And finally, you can still apply in person at your local SSA office. This offers immediate clarification if you have questions right there and then, and you get that face-to-face assistance.
So online, phone, or in person, any advice regardless of method?
Yes, critical advice here. Regardless of the method you choose, always ensure you receive some kind of confirmation of submission, get proof it was received, and keep copies of absolutely everything you submit. The SSA will assign you a unique claim number, keep that number handy, and use it for all future communications. It's your identifier throughout the whole process.
Got it. Keep that claim number safe. So, you've hit submit, now what? It feels like you might just be stuck in limbo, waiting. Is it truly just a waiting game, or are there ways to stay proactive and actually help your case while it's pending?
It's definitely not just a waiting game, though there is waiting involved for sure. The typical processing time for initial applications is somewhere between 3 to 5 months on average. But honestly, this can vary a lot depending on the complexity of your case and how busy your regional processing center is.
3 to 5 months. Okay. So what can you do during that time?
You can't overstate how important it is to make regular status checks. You can often do this through the SSA's online portal, My Social Security. Checking in helps you identify any potential issues early, like if they need more information.
Proactive checking.
Yes. And related to that, it's absolutely vital to respond promptly to all requests from the SSA for additional information or if they schedule you for any examinations. If you delay responding, it can significantly extend the entire process, sometimes adding many more months to your wait.
That makes sense. And here's a really practical tip, something I've seen make a huge difference for people navigating this. Maintain detailed records of all your communications with the SSA. That means noting down the dates you called or received letters, who you spoke with if you called, and exactly what information you provided or received. This documentation will be invaluable if any discrepancies arise later or, heaven forbid, if you need to appeal an unfavorable decision. And hey, maybe set yourself some calendar reminders for those regular status checks. It's easy for it to slip your mind when you're dealing with so much else.
That's fantastic advice. Keeping your own log is crucial.
Okay, this brings us to a specific point in the journey you just mentioned. The source talks about consultative examinations. What exactly are these CEs and why are they important in the application process?
Right. Consultative examinations, or CEs, these are medical exams scheduled and paid for by the SSA when they feel they need additional medical evidence to evaluate your claim. Maybe your own records aren't recent enough, or they need a specific type of assessment.
So not everyone has one.
No, not everyone. Estimates vary, but maybe around 40% of applicants end up going through one. These examinations are conducted by independent, SSA-approved physicians, not your own doctor. Their whole purpose is to evaluate your current functional capacity, what you can do, and the severity of your disability from their perspective. They're trying to get an objective snapshot for the SSA file.
Okay, so if the SSA schedules you for a CE, what should you do to prepare?
Good question. First, review your own medical history, your current symptoms, and your medication list so it's fresh in your mind. Make sure to arrive a little early for the appointment, bring your ID, and dress appropriately and comfortably for whatever type of examination it might be, physical or mental health. Most importantly, be completely honest about your limitations, but avoid any exaggeration. Just describe how you feel and what you can and cannot do. Inconsistencies between what you tell the CE doctor and what's in your records or how you present can actually harm your case. They're looking for consistency.
That makes sense. Be honest, be clear, but don't overdo it. So the examiner's report then becomes part of your official SSA record and directly influences the final decision.
Yes, absolutely. It's another piece of evidence they weigh. It sounds like this examination isn't meant to replace your treating physician's records, but rather to supplement them, maybe fill in some gaps. Is that right?
Exactly right. It's an additional piece of the puzzle for the SSA adjudicator. It gives them another perspective, particularly on your current functional abilities, especially if your own medical records are maybe a bit older or don't address specific functional questions the SSA has.
Okay, that clarifies the CE part. So finally, you've submitted, you've followed up, maybe you've even gone to a CE. Now the decision arrives in the mail. What are the possible outcomes? And crucially, what if it's not the one you were hoping for? Right, the decision notice. The SSA typically renders decisions within that 3 to 5 month timeline we mentioned, though again, complex cases can certainly take longer. Decisions generally fall into 3 categories. You could get a fully favorable decision, which means you get benefits starting from your alleged onset date of disability. That's the best outcome.
Fully favorable. Okay.
Or you might get a partially favorable decision. This might mean they agree you're disabled, but maybe they set a later onset date than you claimed, which affects back pay. Or perhaps find you disabled under slightly different terms.
Partially favorable. And the last one?
And the last one is an unfavorable decision, which means your initial application for benefits is denied entirely.
Okay. And if your initial application is denied, and you said earlier, for about 65% of applicants, that's what happens first. What then? Is that the end of the road?
Absolutely not. Please don't lose hope if you get an initial denial. Many people who are ultimately approved were denied at first. You have appeal rights. You have a 60-day window from the date on the denial notice to file an appeal. The first step is called reconsideration.
Reconsideration.
Yes, and if that's denied, there are actually 4 main appeal levels you can pursue. First is reconsideration, then a hearing before an administrative law judge or ALJ. That's often where people have the best chance on appeal. After that, there's appeals council review, and finally, federal court review. It's a multi-stage process, and persistence really can pay off.
That multi-stage process sounds complex, which brings up a question many people wonder. Do I need a lawyer for this process, especially if I have to appeal?
That's a really common and important question. While it's not strictly required by the SSA, you can represent yourself. Having legal representation can significantly improve your chances of success, especially once you get to the appeal stages, like that ALJ hearing.
Why is that?
Well, experienced disability attorneys or representatives understand the nuances of the SSA's complex rules, the evidence needed, how to effectively cross-examine vocational or medical experts at hearings, and how to present your case in the strongest possible light. And importantly, many attorneys who specialize in this area work on a contingency fee basis. That means you only pay them a percentage of your back benefits if you win your case. If you don't win, you typically don't owe them attorney fees.
So no upfront cost for the lawyer, usually. That's good to know. It really bears repeating then. Many successful applicants are initially denied, but ultimately win on appeal. So understand that appeals process, even before you might need it, seems incredibly important for navigating this whole journey.
It truly is. Knowing the next steps exist can make that initial denial feel less final.
So after exploring all these steps, what does this all truly mean for someone embarking on this? What are the biggest warnings or maybe the most common pitfalls you'd want our listener to really be aware of and try to heed?
Yeah, looking back over the process, the biggest pitfalls often come down to, I'd say, 3 common mistakes that can really derail an application. First, inadequate medical documentation. This is probably the biggest one. It means having incomplete records, maybe missing records from key specialists, or not having evidence that covers the entire period you're claiming disability. The SSA needs comprehensive longitudinal records.
Got it. Documentation gap. What's second?
Second is inconsistent information. Discrepancies between what you put on your application forms, your symptom descriptions, your work history details, your daily activities, and what your medical records actually say. Those inconsistencies raise red flags for the decision makers. Everything needs to align accurately.
Consistency is key. Okay, and the third mistake?
And finally, timing errors. This can go both ways. Filing too early, perhaps before a clear disability pattern is established and documented, can be an issue. But more commonly, waiting too long might mean you miss out on potential back benefits due to protective filing dates. And remember that 12-month duration requirement we talked about. While the SSA requires that your disability lasts, or is expected to last, at least 12 continuous months, you don't necessarily need to wait the full 12 months before you apply if your medical condition clearly indicates it will meet that duration.
Ah, okay. So if it's clear it's going to last a year or more, like a very severe injury or illness, apply sooner rather than later.
Generally, yes. Don't wait unnecessarily if the long-term nature is evident.
Those are incredibly important warnings to keep in mind. Let's tackle just a few other common questions people frequently have about this process, ones that came up in our source material. First, can you work at all while your application is pending?
Ah, the work question. Yes, you technically can work, but you need to be extremely careful about it. Your earnings cannot exceed that substantial gainful activity, or SGA level. For 2024, that amount is $1,470 per month for non-blind individuals.
$4,470 a month.
Right. If you earn over that amount, the SSA will generally assume you're capable of working and will likely deny your claim on that basis alone without even fully evaluating your medical condition. Even working below SGA can sometimes complicate things. The SSA definitely considers any work activity when evaluating your claim, so it's always best to consult with a disability attorney or representative before making any employment decisions while your application is pending. You don't want to inadvertently jeopardize your entire case.
Okay, better safe than sorry on the work front. Next question. Can you apply for both SSDI and SSI simultaneously?
Absolutely, yes. You can and often should apply for both programs at the same time if you think you might meet the requirements for each, meaning the work history for SSDI and the income resource limits for SSI. You use the same application process, and the SSA will evaluate your eligibility for both. They'll determine which benefits you qualify for based on your work history and your current financial situation. Sometimes people qualify for one or the other, or occasionally a combination of both if the SSDI amount is very low.
Good to know you can file concurrently. And finally, a big one we touched on earlier. What medical conditions automatically qualify for SSD benefits? Is there a list where if you have diagnosis X, you're guaranteed approval?
That's a common misconception. The SSA maintains that listing of impairments, which includes very specific medical criteria for conditions that, if met, are generally considered severe enough for disability.
The listings.
Right. However, simply having a diagnosis that's on that list doesn't automatically guarantee approval. You still need to provide comprehensive medical evidence proving that your specific condition meets the severity requirements outlined in that listing, or that it functionally limits you to the point where you cannot work. So it's not just about the diagnosis name, it's always about the severity and the functional limitations it imposes on you, backed up by solid medical evidence.
That makes sense. It always comes back to the evidence and the impact. Well, we've truly taken a deep dive today into navigating the initial SSD application process. It's definitely complex, no doubt about it, but hopefully with these essential steps and insights, you, our listener, are now better equipped to approach it strategically, minimize those common pitfalls, and significantly improve your chances of success on what is an incredibly important journey for many.
You know, what's fascinating about digging into all this is how much of the process truly boils down to meticulous preparation and proactive engagement. It's not passive. The information you've gained today isn't just theory. It's a powerful tool, hopefully transforming what feels like a daunting, impossibly steep climb into a more manageable series of actions you can actually take.
Absolutely. So for you, our listener, here's a final provocative thought to leave you with. Given that really high initial denial rate, that 65%, but also the significant success rate people find on appeal, what does that tell us about perseverance, about the importance of having a clear strategy, not just for the first step, but for the entire potential journey ahead? And maybe what further resources or questions might this deep dive prompt you to explore about advocating for yourself effectively within these kinds of complex governmental systems? We really hope this deep dive has been invaluable on your path to being well-informed.